After drinking water, several Porton Down soldiers become visibly relaxed and begin to giggle. Some stagger around the forest, others struggle to operate rocket launchers, and many collapse in hysterics. It was all part of Operation Moneybags, a 1964 exercise organized by the United Kingdom Military Defense Forces to prove that powerful mind-altering drugs could be used as a warfare technique for soldiers on the battlefield. Unbeknownst to them, the volunteers had been drugged with Lysergic Acid Diethylamide, or LSD, and it was all caught on camera. However, as the disturbing video shows, once the exercise was over, the situation took quite a dark turn. A new type of war. As American and Russian relationships began to fracture in the post-war period, rumors spread that the Soviet Union was developing mind-altering pharmaceuticals. The British, still recovering from the devastating effects of World War II, were determined to be as prepared as they could be for this potential conflict. During the early days of the Cold War, there was a lot of uncertainty regarding what future warfare would look like, especially regarding weapons. As such, the British Army decided to experiment with mind-altering drugs. The Army's drug of choice was Lysergic Acid Diethylamide, or LSD, a powerful psychedelic drug. First synthesized by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann in 1938, the drug's properties were discovered 5 years later when the scientist accidentally ate an unknown quantity of the pharmaceutical. The acid's effects can last up to several hours, can be very intense and hard to control, and can include intensified thoughts, emotions, and hallucinations. In the early 1950s, Porton Down researchers explored the possibility of using LSD to apply it to interrogations and see if the subjects tended to speak out the truth. Porton Down is located near Salisbury and is the site of the Ministry of Defense's Defense Science and Technology Laboratory, one of the United Kingdom's most secretive military research facilities. However, the initial experiments only led to servicemen suffering nightmarish and uncontrollable hallucinations, including war flashbacks, and Porton Down shelved the idea to focus on developing a more humane approach to the use of LSD. Still, the United Kingdom was not the only nation that experimented with LSD. Also in the 1950s, the Central Intelligence Agency purchased most of the world's acid supply and secretly tested the drug on unwitting subjects, ranging from employees, soldiers, prisoners, and other vulnerable patients. For 2 decades, the research program, named Project MK-Ultra, propagated its distribution to hospitals, clinics, prisons, and research centers via front organizations they secretly owned. And when the project was unveiled to the public, it sparked a global outcry. Another decade, another try. As the 1960s arrived, recreational consumption of LSD had become popularized by a powerful youth counterculture that constantly experimented with the substance. The rebellious movements that emerged on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean eventually spread to mainstream culture, with many celebrities partaking in its consumption. Meanwhile, the known effect of this powerful drug, based on the previous experiments and its civilian use, led the British Army to agree to test LSD on their own soldiers. According to an official document belonging to the United Kingdom's Conservative government of the 1960s Advisory Council on Scientific Research and Technical Development, the key objective of this new attempt at drug experimentation was to produce a more humane type of warfare. The general idea behind the program was that incapacitating enemy soldiers using non-lethal agents would translate into less lethal violence. To achieve this, the original plan was to create chemical drug bombs that would spread all over enemy infantries. The pharmaceutical would then incapacitate them, limiting the impact of collateral damage to civilians and property. As a result of that logic, Porton Down decided to equate field exercises of LSD consumption by involving the United Kingdom's own troops. Moneybags. During the first 4 years of experimentation, the program was divided into 3 exercises: Moneybags, Recount, and Short Change. The first one, Moneybags, was carried out with soldier volunteers at the secretive Porton Down facilities from November 27th to December 4th, 1964. In one of the most bizarre Cold War-era military research experiments, Film footage shows volunteer subjects from 41 Royal Marine Commando under the influence of Lysergic Acid Diethylamide. The volunteers were organized into 2 sections, each with a headquarters base. The troops were then given the task to capture as many terrorists as possible, locating some material hidden in defined areas. This exercise was conducted over 3 days, 2 of which were called control days and involved the soldiers performing their training as usual. However, on the 3rd day, LSD was secretly administered to the soldiers via cups of water before the training exercise. The researchers then ventured into the countryside along with the soldiers to observe their behavior while out on the field. The footage shows that, while under the influence of the powerful drug, the exercise quickly descends into farce once the full effect of the pharmaceutical take their toll on the unknowing troops. In the initial moments, the troops continued to exert physical activity, followed instructions, and had sufficient awareness of the positions of the simulated enemy. However, as more time passed, the full impact of the drug on the Royal Marines becomes more noticeable. Most of the soldiers forgot that they were in the middle of a simulated battlefield, as they were no longer taking cover or could barely aim their guns. Also, instead of following orders from their commanders, the strange-acting soldiers relaxed and giggled. That said, the effects of the potent drug continued on some of the volunteers while recuperating after the exercise, with many looking devoid of any emotion and even requiring medical assistance. Aftermath. By the time the exercises involving LSD and British Armed Forces members ended in 1968, the writing was on the wall for the research program. That same year, the Chemical Defense Advisory Board declared that using LSD as a weapon was more magical than scientific, dismissing all claims that it could be used in any sort of warfare. In the same manner, the new British High Command also questioned the ethics of such an experiment and decided to shut it down forever. Deemed a failure by many researchers, some personnel from Operation Moneybags also continued to suffer from many lasting effects derived from their involvement in the program. The drug-related tests at Porton Down lasted for 15 years, going through several stages that involved different doses and chemicals used on about 7,000 British soldier volunteers. And while the exact data is still classified, rumors suggest that over 200 volunteers perished during the extensive trials. Then, in the mid-2000s, 3 ex-servicemen claimed to have been given the hallucinogen without their consent in the initial 1950s experiments. Instead of being told they were ingesting LSD, the men claimed that they were told their volunteer work was to find a cure for the common cold. According to the soldiers' testimonies, some volunteers suffered terrifying and deranged hallucinations that scarred them for life. In 2006, the ex-servicemen received a hefty compensation from the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense concerning the administration of LSD without consent. Still, they continued to deny any admission of liability relating to the settlements. The ministry's posture has never changed, and as one of their spokesmen once stated, quote, "The Ministry of Defense is very grateful to all those whose participation in studies at Porton Down made possible the research to provide safe and effective protection for the United Kingdom Armed Forces." Thank you for watching Dark Footage. If you enjoyed our video, please give us a thumbs up and let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, for more history-inspired content, don't forget to check out all our Dark Documentaries channels. Stay tuned.